When you think of the Navy, you probably imagine massive ships cutting through the ocean, fighter jets taking off, and the occasional submarine disappearing into the depths of the sea. But behind all of this, there's a whole crew of dedicated individuals, each playing their part to ensure everything runs smoothly. Today, we're pulling back the curtain and taking a closer look at what life is really like for a Navy officer. Life on a Navy ship isn't like your typical 9-to-5 job. It's more like living in a self-contained world, isolated from the outside with its own set of rules, duties, and routines. And at the center of this world are the officers, responsible for everything from leading operations to making split-second decisions that can determine the success of a mission. It all begins early. For most officers, the day starts before sunrise. While many of us are still hitting the snooze button, Navy officers are already up and about, preparing for a day full of intense responsibility. They wake up in their small cabins, a world away from the comforts of home. For those who live on aircraft carriers or large destroyers, these rooms are typically shared with other officers, and space is limited. You get used to it, privacy becomes a luxury. Breakfast is a quick affair. There's no time for leisurely meals here. Officers typically eat in the galley with the rest of the crew, where you're surrounded by the constant hum of chatter and the sounds of trays clinking. For many, this is the only time of day they get to sit down with fellow officers and crew members, discuss the day's objectives, and prepare for the challenges ahead. After breakfast, it's time for the daily briefing. The officers gather in a secure room where they're briefed on the day's operations, whether it's coordinating airstrikes, ensuring the ship is on course, or preparing for a covert operation. Everyone has a role to play. Every day brings something new. It might be a routine training exercise, or it might be something far more serious. As an officer, you have to stay on your toes. You need to know what's going on, what needs to happen next, and most importantly, how to communicate that to your team. Officers have to be adaptable. They have to juggle multiple tasks and lead teams in high-pressure situations. It's not just about issuing orders. It's about ensuring that everyone knows their role, trusts their leadership, and is ready for anything. The demands of leadership. But leadership doesn't just stop at the briefing room. Officers are constantly on the move, checking on their teams, overseeing operations, and ensuring that everything is running smoothly. It's a constant balancing act between being a manager, a mentor, and, at times, a friend. And this is where the pressure starts to build. An officer isn't just responsible for themselves. They're responsible for their entire crew. Every decision they make impacts the mission, the team, and sometimes the success of an entire operation. The stakes are high, and the weight of responsibility can be overwhelming. The unique challenges of Navy life. It's not all just meetings and operations. Being a Navy officer means spending long periods away from home, isolated in the middle of the ocean. You don't get to see your family whenever you want, and communication with the outside world can be limited. Many officers say this is one of the most difficult aspects of their job. Sometimes it's tough. You're out there on the ocean, far from everything, but the sense of purpose and the bond you build with your fellow officers and sailors makes it all worth it. You're part of something bigger than yourself, and that's something special. At the end of the day, after a full day of operations, inspections, and problem-solving, the workday comes to an end. But that doesn't mean the pressure stops. Officers often spend their evenings preparing for the next day's briefing, reviewing mission plans, or making sure their teams are ready for what's ahead. In the rare moments of downtime, officers often reflect on the day. They unwind, connect with their families back home, or simply take a moment to relax before the cycle begins again. The work is demanding, but it's also deeply rewarding. Life as a Navy officer is challenging, unpredictable, and often isolating, but it's also one of the most rewarding careers out there. From the early mornings to the late nights, the constant balancing of leadership, strategy, and responsibility every day brings something new. And while the demands are high, the sense of duty and camaraderie make it all worth it. This is just a glimpse into the life of a Navy officer, the sacrifices, the hard work, and the dedication required to serve on the front lines of global security. It's not for everyone, but for those who choose this path, it's a life of honor, service, and commitment to something greater than themselves.